I were the devil, I wouldn't try to make people hate God. Hatred creates resistance, and resistance keeps God present in the mind. Instead, I would make God feel unnecessary. I would keep people so comfortable, so distracted, and so self-reliant that they slowly drift away without ever realizing they've moved. I would convince them they are in control. I wouldn't tell them there is no God. I would tell them they are capable, independent, and strong enough on their own. I would teach them to trust productivity instead of prayer, effort instead of grace, and achievement instead of dependence. When people believe they can manage everything themselves, they stop reaching for something higher. I would remove silence from their lives, because silence is where reflection begins. Silence is where people become aware of their emptiness, their questions, and their need for meaning. So I would replace it with constant noise, screens, notifications, entertainment, urgency. Not telling them not to pray, just convincing them they can always do it later. One more scroll, one more task, one more day. Over time, they would lose the ability to sit still, and with it, the ability to hear God at all. I would redefine freedom so that restraint feels like oppression. I would convince them that freedom means never denying desire, never exercising discipline, never submitting to anything beyond themselves. Sacrifice would feel like loss. Obedience would feel like peace. Holiness would feel like harm. Anything that demands growth would be reframed as a threat to identity. I would make faith comfortable and shallow. I would let people call themselves believers, celebrate traditions, and speak the language of spirituality, but I would keep belief from changing how they live. No repentance, no self-examination, no transformation. Faith would become a label instead of a way of life, something inherited rather than chosen. I would replace repentance with comparison. Instead of asking how they are falling short, I would teach them to measure themselves against others. As long as there is always someone worse, they will feel justified. Pride will feel like moral confidence, and humility will quietly disappear. I would make sure God is associated with hypocrisy, not by inventing evil, but by amplifying it. Abuse, corruption, control, and contradiction. That way, when people turn away, they will believe they are rejecting injustice, not God. They won't realize they've confused the failures of people with the nature of the divine. I would make truth feel optional. Right and wrong would become flexible, personal, and negotiable. Conviction would feel arrogant. Commitment would feel extreme. God's voice would become just one opinion among many, easy to ignore and easier to replace. I would tie human worth to success, appearance, productivity, and status. If people believe their value is external, they will neglect their inner life. Humility, patience, and service will feel pointless. God, who speaks quietly and values the unseen, will be drowned out by the noise of comparison and validation. I would teach them that suffering is meaningless, that pain is proof of abandonment rather than formation, that hardship means God is absent or cruel. Bitterness would replace lament, and resentment would replace trust. Faith wouldn't collapse because of suffering, but because of how suffering is understood. And above all, I would keep life comfortable. Comfortable enough to avoid deep questions. Comfortable enough to avoid desperation. Comfortable enough that no one feels the need to seek anything beyond themselves. Because people rarely walk away from God on purpose. They drift, slowly, quietly, unnoticed. And drifting feels like nothing at all.